not able to follow it, so I'm start recording it right now. So there we go. How to create compliance training that won't be a chore to your employees. That's what we're going to discuss today. So as I said, I'm Kasper Spiro. I'm the CEO of Easygenerator, working in the space of knowledge sharing, e-learning, workplace learning, content management, electronic performance support already for decades now. And we're working with Easygenerator now for 5 years on creating a tool that facilitates people to create e-learning in a different way. My colleague Danielle is also present. We have all of you on mute because otherwise there will be a lot of noise. So if you have any questions, on the bottom of your screen you'll find a chat button. So feel free to ask any questions through that chat window, and Danielle will monitor that and break in whenever is necessary. And we will also have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the session. So compliance training is something you have to do. So you need to make sure that you are compliant to certain rules and regulations. You need to make sure that everybody took that, and you need to be able to prove it. But it's not the most exciting stuff. And there are a couple of problems that we found when researching it that people are struggling with. So it's a lack of resources, so where to get all the information. The lack of engagement, so people don't like to take it and are dropping off, but they have to take the courses, so that's like sort of a struggle. And part of that problem is that the content is really repetitive, so the information is sort of the same every year over and over again. Some things change, and in order to make sure that they learned everything, and also just the small parts that change maybe, they have to go over the whole bunch again. So that is not really an attractive context, but you can make it way, way better. So, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing is lack of resources. So where do you get your information? So how do you start? I will show you just a moment. I will go to the Easygenerator website for a moment. So that is over here. So yep. So if you go to the Easygenerator website, you will find a menu on top of it. And one of the menus is resources. If you click that, a page will open and you have the ability to download all kind of stuff and see other things. If you scroll down, you can here filter on certain topics. And if you filter on e-learning examples, you will find a whole bunch of courses, like a course on GDPR, the data privacy law in the Netherlands, fundamental network security, like a security thing, an example on communication guidelines, data protection and confidentiality. So there are all kind of example courses that you can check out and use as a starting point. You can even get them into Easygenerator, and our plan was to have that available right now. So if you are in Easygenerator, which I will show you right now, and you create a new course, you click this button, you get all kind of example courses. So examples here, corporate learning, education. Our plan is to add these courses to this as well. And then if you click it, it will just give you that course in editing mode in Easygenerator, so you can really use it as a starting point. But they will be in next week. So we're 1 week too late, so I apologize for that. But it will be in next week. If you need them earlier, just drop us an email. We'll give you the information at the end of the webinar, and we'll share them beforehand in Easygenerator with you. By the way, this example page has a lot of other resources. I will come back to it later on, but check that out. So using these examples is a really good example. So we have them. The other thing, of course, if you want to find examples, if you just surf the web and Google it, you'll find many, many, many examples. And the good thing about compliance training and security training is that they are quite generic. So for large part, they're the same for all companies. And that is like so a good place to start with shared content and make it more specific for your liking. The second thing is that you shouldn't be creating it yourself. So I assume that most of you are people who are responsible to create e-learning, but you are not the subject matter experts on the field of compliance for a certain law, for a certain security or whatever. that knowledge probably lives into somewhere in the business. And the normal old school process is now on my screen. So you're in the learning and development department, I assume, and probably there's an instructional designer there. And what will happen is that that person will interview one or more subject matter experts, employees in the business who have the knowledge around a certain topic, in this case, compliance. So the person who is responsible for creating the learning needs to sort of absorb all that information, create and design a course, go back and forth with the subject matter expert to make sure everything is correct. And once it is correct, you have to publish the content in an environment where a learner can see it. So that is very often a learning management system, an intranet, whatever. That process is really slow and it's really expensive. So there are research proving that an hour of e-learning will cost you something like 30,000 euro to create it this way. And maybe even a bigger problem is that there's a disconnect between the people who have the knowledge, so the subject matter expert, and the course. So if people are getting feedback or is something changed, there's not a trigger that will set an update of that content in motion, because the instructional designer, the person who's managing the course, is not aware of those changes. So that is like a flaw. So it's too slow, it's too expensive, and you can't maintain it. With Easygenerator, we have a different approach, and we call that employee-generated learning. And then the picture look like this. So you have a learning and development department, but it's not creating the courses, the subject matter expert is. So Easygenerator is an authoring environment, really, really simple. It gives you support, tactic support, and all kind of other support in helping you create proper e-learning. So you do not need to be a specialist in e-learning. The instructional designer is very often still there, but in a coaching role, a co-creator role, a supporting role for the subject matter expert. But the subject matter expert is actually creating the content. And with compliance and security training, the instructional designer very often is the person who needs to sign off the course, because you need to know that it's really like 100% perfect. So there are no flaw in the content, but still the subject matter expert has the end responsibility for maintaining and updating the content. So it shifts towards the business, where the learner also is. And the other good thing is then there's still a direct connection between the person who wrote the course, in this case, subject matter experts, the content, but also the knowledge. So if anything changes in the knowledge or anything changes in the legislation, you can update the content, because you really don't want to learn people outdated content. So that's one thing you don't want. So with the approach that we support, the employee-generated learning approach, it is faster, it's cheaper, and the content becomes maintainable. And that is what Easygenerator does for almost 1,000 companies worldwide, smaller companies, bigger companies, and they use us for all kinds of stuff, and compliance is one of them. So that is about lack of resources, but there's more. We also have lack of engagement, and to put it mildly, a lot of compliance training are extremely boring. They are a lot of text, a lot of questions you have to go over and over again, and they will be sort of the same every year. So if you are creating that, there's a couple of tips that we can give you that will make it more interactive and make it more engaging. So use multimedia. So videos, of course, are a great thing, but also multimedia doesn't stop with video. So it's also maybe scenarios, images, slideshows, whatever you can come up. So the old saying that an image is worth more than 1,000 words actually is really true. If you can sort of capture something in an image, for example, if I explain the whole thing of employee-generated learning, but I do that around this image, it becomes way simpler to explain to me, because you have a reference case and you can sort of imagine something with that. If you just have words, if I put like 1,000 words on this page explaining to you what it is, it would be far less obvious what it is. So use images whenever and wherever you can. But also, of course, video and audio are really powerful ways, and it's also really engaging. So make also sure that you switch modalities. So switch between text, between images, between video and audio. use different question types. So questions are really, really important in this kind of training, and that is because you need to make sure that you assess people and that you can prove that they actually are able to comply to all the rules. In Easygenerator, for example, we have like 9 question types, but we find that although we have 9 question types, and also you see it more generic in other tools as well, the vast majority of questions will be multiple choice. So you have like a question, you have 4 answer options, and you have to pick one of the good answer options, or maybe 2 or 3. That's sort of the variety. And that is like maybe 95% of the question types, but there's way, way more. So what you see on the screen in this example of a hotspot question. So it's in Easygenerator, you can create a hotspot. So for example, the question would be mark Earth and Mars. You see an image of all the planets, and you actually have to click on it, and then this marker will be placed, and you submit it, and then you will find out if those are the right planets or not. That kind of question type. We have fill in the blank questions, we have drag and drop questions, we have very, very many question types, and really use them. It keeps it's engaging for the learner. It's a great learning moment, and for you a great moment to check if they actually know what they're talking about. So, and now also if you connect it to the images, so if you explain things with images, like I said here, then you can also use those images in question types like that. So then you stay away from very content heavy, wordy questions. So try to mix and match not only your media, but also your question types. One thing that people don't do often when creating e-learning, but at the same time, and hardly ever, I think, when creating compliance training, is use storytelling and using humor. And it is an extremely powerful way to bring a message across. So if you are just putting up, just transferring all the knowledge they need to have by writing that in pages and pages with text, and people have to read that, it's boring, it's not attractive, they will drop off, but also they will remember it really badly. If you are able to make like a story out of that, and to sort of engage them with that story and learn them something in that story, that is much, much more effective. So storytelling is extremely powerful way of learning. So make sure you use that. What you also can do, so the other thing which is really connected closely to storytelling and to compliance training, is that if you just give people the rules, it's really hard for them to understand how to apply those rules into the practice. If you use storytelling, or maybe even a scenario-based approach, where you put people in a certain situation and you have them make choices, and then let them know whether or not those choices are correct or incorrect, they will have a much better understanding, and it's a much more interactive way of learning, but then learning in the way of finding out how things are actually working and understanding what goes wrong if they make the wrong choice. So storytelling and scenarios are really important to present information in a different way, but also to have a much more active approach of the learner, instead of just reading passively or watching a video passively. So it engages them really, really well. So make use of that. Another thing that people often do in compliance training is that the whole compliance training will be in one huge big course, and it's like something you have to take once. I mean, you're succeeded, you're done, and it's a really bad approach of learning. And that is first and foremost because of the forgetting curve. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the forgetting curve is like ancient, at the end of the 19th century, was discovered by Mr. Ebbinghaus, a psychologist. And what he found, that if you transfer knowledge to somebody in one go, and you see that here in the blue line, you will reach a certain level of what they can remember. But what he found, if you then measure over time, they will forget something like 90%. So the blue line indicates the amount of information that somebody actually drops from his memory. The reason for that is quite simple. We have two kinds of memories. We have a short-term memory and we have a long-term memory. And a short-term memory sort of keeps track of everything that's happening, but it has limited capacity. So if you wouldn't remove stuff from your short-term memory, it would have an overflow. It couldn't hold everything. So you constantly need to make decisions on what to keep there, what you need, what is important, but all the new impressions will sort of fight for spots in your short-term memory. And that means that everything sooner or later will sort of drop. So the way to remember things long-term is to transfer them to your long-term memory, but that needs to be triggered. Sometimes you will remember something in one go, and that can be if something is very emotional or has a huge impact on you and things like that. Usually that is not the case with compliance training. So the only way to transfer then the information from your short-term memory into your long-term memory is by repeating it over and over and over again. If you repeat information, in this case, the example is that you repeat it like 4 times within a 3-week period, you will see that the retention goes up, and you can get from, instead of losing 90%, you can go up to remembering 90% of the information, and that is what you want. So it depends a bit on your goal. If your goal is just, I need to comply, so everybody needs to have a certificate, and I want to make sure that I can prove that, then it's like, okay, to have one big shot. But if you are sort of interested that people can actually apply that information and your company is more safer and secure, then this approach is much better. And what you usually do is you cut it up into small pieces. So in e-learning, we call that bite size, we call it learning snacks. You create courses that are not longer than 15 minutes. That's sort of like the best approach, sometimes shorter, but not much longer. So you cut up your information in those pieces, and what you do, you present it to people over time. So not in one big bang, but small pieces every time. And what you also do, in the first course, you have like an introduction and the first part, and then after a week, you give them the second part. You start with a repetition of the first one. So you give a short overview. What did you do? What did we do last time? So things we learned, and then you start with the new information, and you continue doing that while repeating that time after time. So that is really important, that you spread it out over time, and that in e-learning is called, or in learning is called spaced learning. Space it out over time. At Easygenerator, we really are focused on helping you to create those better courses. So we have a feature for this, and we call that course Afterword. So it looks like this. So when you're done with a course and you passed it, or you failed it, by the way, in both ways, you can get an instruction. What do you have to do next? So in this case, you have completed the course, and I just put in, well, okay, go to the Easygenerator website to visit that. But you can also link, for example, and that's maybe more logical, to the next part of the course. So you start with part 1, and then if you're done, go to part 2. Or if you're not done, if you failed it, maybe you want to direct people to maybe additional information, or maybe want them to redo the course, or wanted to read maybe a PDF or whatever, or go to a website to get information, and you can do that in Easygenerator. I will just show you how that works. So I will now show Easygenerator on my screen. There it is. I have to go one step back. Sorry, here it is. Yep. So I have here an example course that was also on the website, a compliance course, and it has information in it. So it's about GDPR, the privacy law, European privacy law, and there are chapters there. But if you look at it, there's an introduction. So that's the first part where you explain what's about. Then you have the course itself, and then we have course Afterward. And what you saw in my presentation, I will switch to it briefly here. So this page, I created that over here. So there are 2 parts in the course Afterward. One, if somebody actually reaches the mastery score, so that is like the score that you set in Easygenerator that people have to reach. So it can be 80 or 100%, it's up to you. You can switch that. You can just create text, and there is also a possibility that you, if people fail, that you give them other information, and we'll just show you how that works. So on the left side, you see the editor that we have, and you have a lot of options. So you have like text options with a link. You can do images, you can do video, or audio. You can even embed documents. So if you want them to read a PDF, you can actually put it in and they can download it, or a PowerPoint or a Word document. We have a couple of interactive things like the hotspots, show more block, and we have an open editor. And how it works, you just select what you want. So if I want to have a one column text, I just select that and just drop it in. It gives you an example text. I will use the header to type what to do next. And then the text is something like, you have filled this part, and then please, and then you can put in a lot of extra information, what they need to do. Oh, sorry, I want to do that. And you can do more. For example, you can put it an image. So just drag and drop that. Oh, sorry, I have to drag and drop it in the correct spot over here. So you see that we put in an example, and we do that with images. We also do it with audio, with video, or with documents. So we do put in an example. So what you have to do always is click here and either upload a new one from your PC. So you can just select an image from your PC and upload it. You can also just paste in any link for a web-based image or video. So for example, a YouTube video. And everything you upload once is stored in your personal library. So if you go to the library, you will find a lot of images, and then you can just select one and put it in, and then you have your own image and you can change your own text. So that is really important. And we also have what we call our linking feature. So let me put it here. So if you want to direct them, oh sorry, that's not the right one. So by removing, you do it like this. I have to go to the text one and then select our curation element. So for example, if I want to go them to a course, every course in Easygenerator gets like a URL. But if you want to go to a web page, you can just put in the link, and what you will see, we will get an image from that website. We'll give like a short explanation, and you can give a link description. So please search here on, and then anything you want. So you can give like an extra direction there. So those features will help you to create like a course afterwards, a direction for the learner to decide what to do next. So either to move to the next course, to read extra information, or to do something else. So that way you can cut up your course into small pieces, have them no longer than the 15 minutes that I talked about, and build in repetition in your next section. So build smaller pieces with repetition and connect them with a course afterwards. Of course, if you have a learning management system, not all of you will, but if you have that, the learning management system also has the ability to list courses one after another, and you can do sort of the same there, and then you just upload your Easygenerator courses into your learning management system, and you will have the same outcome. Okay. And the other thing is, so whatever you do, please make sure that everything you create is mobile ready. So I think if you look at e-learning, it is nowadays even more often what we call not mobile ready, but mobile first. So you design something for a phone or a tablet, and it's nice if it still runs on a PC, but most people will actually take a course on a phone or a tablet. Those are becoming the favorite and most used devices for learning. So a PC or a laptop still is important, but it is declining in importance. So what you need to do, at least to make sure it works on all those environments. That means that you need to create an authoring environment. And of course, you can create queues. You can choose Easygenerator. But if you choose another, make sure that your authoring environment is completely responsive, as we call it. So it will sort of detect on what device it runs, what the screen size is, and it will automatically adjust to that. And that is really, really, really important. Because if you don't, then courses will not run, or they will not fit on the screen, or images will cover your whole phone screen and stuff like that, and then people will just drop off. So make sure it runs on mobile, and if possible, use a tool like Easygenerator, which is fully responsive, which sort of adjusts itself to different devices. Just a small word, by the way, on responsiveness. As you see here, this is a course, and you see it's outlined differently. So probably if you have this on a big screen, the image is bigger and the text is more wider. But it's not, some of the responsive tools, they are not really responsive. They just make things smaller, so they fit on a smaller screen. But if you look at a phone screen, so the way it's designed, the whole layout is really different than a wide screen that you would have connected to your PC. And if it's like truly responsive, it will not only make sure that it fits, but also adjust the information in a way that is presented in the best way. So to have a fully responsive course, make sure your authoring environment is capable of doing that. There are many more best practices that I can go over, but I just wanted to show you 2 ways where you can get more information, and we will share that information with you. So again, in the resource page of Easygenerator, by the way, it's like the first thing here. It's the 9 cornerstones of effective course creation. These are 9 best practices, 9 tips on how to create better learning content, and all of them apply to compliance training as well. And what we also have, we have a blog series on that, where we sort of took those same 9 steps and made them more specific for compliance training. So it's on our website. So just go to the first blog and you'll find that. So the first one is use learning objectives and how to create them. And then you can just go to the second part and we'll go over all 9 tips. So on the website, you find more information. Partly it's the same information I just gave you today. And so you can read it over and have a bit more detail, and partly there are some extra tips as well. For example, on how to write text for screens. So you have to take into account that writing for screen is different than writing for paper. So and how to do that, and especially how long your text can be and stuff like that. There's a lot of information on that. So you can go there for additional information. Let me go back to my presentation. Sorry. So we have a whole bunch of best practices for you ready. So you can use them whenever you want. So you don't have to be an Easygenerator user in order to go to our resource page and download stuff. You can just do that freely. Something I mentioned before is the repetitiveness of the content. So if you have to comply, for example, I just mentioned GDPR, it's also on the screen, it's the legislation. So everybody had to create courses last year because it was a new law, but you need to make sure that people are complying to that every year. So you have to test your people in your company. Do they act conform this legislation or not? So you want to take this course at least once a year and you make sure that everybody takes it. But the law doesn't change that much. So maybe a small part will change or some best practices will change. So maybe 5 or 10% of your course will be different in the second year than in the first year. And you make people go over it from top to bottom all over again, which is extremely boring. So we have a facility for that in Easygenerator that sort of solves that problem. Let me see, where am I? Here it is. So here's Easygenerator. And I just wanted to briefly show you by creating a very small course how that works. So if you are in Easygenerator, this is the course list, the starting point. So if you are new in Easygenerator, this list will be empty. This is the list with courses I created. I create a new course, and as I said, I can either start from scratch or from an example. In this case, I want to start from scratch. And with these Easygenerator, so you see we have something we call templates. You see a lot of templates there from customers we have. That is not so. If you have that, you only see 4 of them. You see the all-in-one template and the assessment template. But if you click on more, you see 2 more. And they are reader and personalized learning. And the personalized learning is the one that is perfect for compliance training. So we'll just call it compliance example. And I will make a very simple course to show you how it works. So I can, of course, create an introduction first. So I will not put a lot of time in that. And here's the part where you create your course and your section. So I will create section 1. And if you create a course like that, normally you mix and match your content questions, which we have here, with the other questions. So the information I showed you for the course afterwards was an example of a content page, but here are the question types that I talked about. So if you put in a question type, you also just drag and drop it in and call it question 1. And for this example, I will just choose 3 questions. So I have a single choice. I will do a text matching question. And I will do, let me do no statement question. So you just create the questions that you want people to be able to answer that. So that is sort of what you do when you have a learning objective. In this case, people need to be able to comply to the law or the rule or the security rule, whatever. So that is your goal. So you can work out in a bit more detail, and then you can come up with, okay, what do I need to know from people that if they are answer those questions or do those assignments, that I'm convinced that they can actually do the job or they can actually comply to that rule. So in Easygenerator, if you create a question, I will just briefly show you. So question 1, I will not create really meaningful information, but I will just call it ABC to be really quick. You can give feedback if it's correct or not correct, but here is an extra piece which is really important. You can add content directly to the question. And how this template works is that it doesn't present the content to the learner, it presents the questions to the learner. And if they answer a question correct, it will sort of filter out the content. It will not show that anymore because it assumes you answered it correctly. You do not have to read it. So what you get is a pre-assessment that filters out all the information. You get a study advice for the parts that you miss out on. But the information that you miss out on needs to be connected to the question. So instead of creating a separate content page, you add the content here directly to the question. So here is the question explanation if you want. And that is the information that will be shown if I answer this question incorrect. I will show you in a minute. So I will go to the second question and also go in there. That is a different question type. In this case, it's a matching question. So what you have like a key and a matching term. So for example, A1 and B2, and etc. C and 3, for example. But of course, you could imagine that you have like sort of a term here from, for example, compliancy, and you need to match that with a term from that, and so you can sort of use that. But again, you have to put in the additional information, and this time I will just create like a double text with 2 images, and just to make sure that I replace one of those images, put it in. And you can make the text also more specific. But this is like the information for question 2. I hope you can imagine that you can put in more meaningful information. And then the third question type that I had was a statement question. So you have a statement and you have to type in, is it false or is it true? And you can switch that around if you want. So this is statement C, which is false, and I can add a fourth statement D, which is true, for example. And now I created like a mini course that I can use for compliance reasons. And of course, I can do add a course afterwards, but I already showed it to you to direct them to the next course if they fail or if they pass. Then in Easygenerator, if you publish it, you can just get either a private link, you can put it into your website like a YouTube video in embed code, but you can also export it to your learning management system. But in this case, I will just show you on the web. So I'm now looking at the course from the perspective of a learner. So in this case, I need to introduce myself. I will skip that. I start the pre-assessment, and you see I got a list with all the 3 questions that I made. So I will deliberately answer this one correct. So question 1 is answered correct, and the other ones I will answer incorrect. So I will just make a mess of that, and I will also make a mess of that. So remember, question 1 is correct, question 2 and question 3 are incorrect. If I submit it, it will then filter out. So it says, okay, so from section 1, and you know there are 3 questions there, you have to read in this case, question 2, question 3, and of course you have to put in the topic. And if I click on start, you will see I get the information that I put in, the learning content, with the images, the text, whatever you do. And so I can read that again, and then I get the question again. So then after answering this question, I can answer, after reading the content, I can hopefully answer the question correct, and I submit it. It tells me it's correct. And you see that my study advice is now, I'm now on 2/3 of my learning objective, and I only have like one thing left. The recommended reading is only now question 3. And what it does, it sort of filters out the content, and it focuses people on the stuff they do not know yet. We track and trace all the results, either in your learning management system or through Easygenerator. So it doesn't matter if they answer it at the first time or the second time. It really helps to sort of make it much faster, and that is attractive to people in general. So that is something you can use. And just one thing that I want to add to that is that if you use questions in learning, there are 2 options, or 2 ways, or 2 reasons, I have to say, why you use those questions. So one is, of course, what I did now, sort of test out if people really know their stuff. So it's like an assessment, but you can also use questions for learning. So what you can do, for example, is use this course just for them to go over that and make sure they learn it. But then you can also create like sort of a separate assessment, and after the learning part is done, tell them in course afterward to go to the assessment part and do a separate assessment where questions are, to test them, really do they know it. If not, you migrate them back to navigate them back to the course. If they are correct, then can move to the next course. So by having a learning course and an assessment separate from each other, you can do it even better, and so you can use your questions in a different way. Let's move back to the presentation. Here. So that was about the personalized learning template. There's a bit more in Easygenerator. So although we are an authoring tool, I already showed you that you can publish a course inside Easygenerator, so we can host a course as well, which makes it like a sort of a YouTube video kind of thing. So with a link or an embed code, you can share it with people. So you can actually share a course via Skype, or I could put a course in the chat window and you can actually take it. So that is one that we have, but we also track and trace the results. We can do that in any learning management system. There are like default standards for that, and we support SCORE, Mix API, and a couple of others like LTI. But we also track and trace all the results inside Easygenerator. So even if you do not have a learning management system, or if you have people who do not have access to your learning management system, for example, if they are contractors or people not yet working for you, and then very often they don't have access to your corporate LMS, you can just give them a link to the course. They can take the course, and they can actually you will actually see the results. What we also added for them is that after they finish the course, and if they are successful, in this case I did the GDPR course this morning, and I was successful in passing it with a score of 100%, and I can get a course certificate on that. So I can prove that I actually did the course with a positive result. So that are really simple features of Easygenerator, extra features, extra benefits, I would say, that can help you either if you do not have an LMS, or if you have people who do not have access to your LMS, to still do proper compliance training and prove that people took it, and prove that they took it with a positive result. And also for the learner, they have an ability, because they can download this certificate in a PDF, so they have something to show as well. I did the course and I passed the course. They can show it to the manager, who probably doesn't have access to the results, but they can still prove it. So that is like something that is really simple to use in Easygenerator. So those are the results and certificates. And that was the last part of the things I want to share with you. So just to go over it one more time, if you have lack of resources, so use the examples that we have, or use examples online, especially with compliance training. That is really helpful, because a large part will be sort of the same. But most of all, use your subject matter experts. So don't start creating content yourself. Don't interview people. Give them the means to create the courses themselves. Make them responsible for maintaining them. And yourself, you are much more like in a coaching role, in a guiding role. To fight the lack of engagement, use multimedia, but also mix and match the different types. So don't go just for image only or for video only. Use everything: text, image, video, audio, whatever you can. The same for the question types. Don't just go for the old school multiple choice question, but use the question types that are available in your authoring environment. It is much more interactive, and you also have the question types will have a different way of querying people. So for example, if you have a fill in the blank question, they don't see the answer. They have to type in the answer. So you are testing active knowledge. If you put the question on the screen with the answer and have to pick it from A, B, or C, they recognize it. So then you are testing much more the passive knowledge. So question types is not only for variety, but it's also really important to test knowledge in a different way. Use things like storytelling, humor, scenarios, and really important, don't make one big course. Space it out. Split it up into small parts, not longer than 15 minutes. Connect those parts with the course afterwards feature or your learning management system, and make sure that in the second course you repeat the first things of the first course before you start teaching the new stuff, and that way space it out over time. If people decide I want to do like the 10 parts that you have in one go, it's up to them, but you will find that people will take a break of a day and then maybe do the next one, or maybe even wait for a week. So that is helpful for the learner, and it will absolutely increase the effectiveness of your course and the retention of what you are learning to them. If you use Easygenerator for your compliance training, you will find that it's mobile ready by default. It's really easy to space out your learning, whether you're in a learning management system or not. You have like a smart course, which refers to the responsiveness. So the course knows on which device it runs and will adapt to that course. So not just shrink to the right size, but really have a better layout for that specific screen size. And you will get result certificates as well. And for example, with Easygenerator, that's like really special. So if you have a team plan with 5 authors, those results and certificates will come for free and unlimited. So if you have a learning management system, you have to pay a certain amount every month for a learner. At Easygenerator, you only pay for the authors. So that is also something which is different. So those were the key takeaways from today. And I did succeed in staying within my 45 minutes as planned, so that is really great. So if you have any questions, feel free to chat, and then we will pick them up. If not, then I want to thank you all for your attention and joining us in this webinar. Danielle will reach out to all of you, making sure that you get the information. We'll share with you all the extra information that I shared in this webinar with you. And you can also ask her any questions you want, any extra information you might need. So I don't see any questions popping up. So I think then we'll sign off for today. So thank you for your time and have a great day. Goodbye.